brand new edition here of Wooden Sticks. As always, recording from the Aquarius Home Services studio. Brand new On X Hunt has joined the fray here, so another sponsor of our show. We'll get more information on them as the weeks progress here. But thanks for finding us, and really enjoyable show ahead today. Erica McKenzie, one of the all-time great women's hockey players in the history of Minnesota hockey, will be a part of the show today. She has worked for the Wild for 15 years, so I see her on a regular basis. I've had the fortune of traveling with her to some games, including a preseason game this year where she had some special season ticket holders on that trip. We went to play the Blackhawks, I believe, back in September. So just a wonderful human being. Anybody that knows her, loves her. Tremendous talent on the ice. And, you know, I remember vividly when I was coaching women's college hockey in the late 90s into the early 2000s, getting the chance to watch her on a regular basis and the way she competed. And, you know, you think of the big names in girls hockey in Minnesota, and I think this was a really cool week to connect with Erica because we have a mutual friendship with two Hall of Famers now. I got to watch the induction ceremony on Monday night on NHL Network, but to see Natalie Darwitz and Chrissy Wendell-Pohl go into the Hockey Hall of Fame, it just blew me away because, you know, these are two of the pioneers of girls hockey in the state, and Erica would be another name on that list. You think of the greats in the history of high school hockey on the girls' side, and you know, the boys' side goes back so much further, but if you're only stretching back to the 90s, we're talking about just 30 years here. And Erica is probably top 10 all time, played for the University of Minnesota, and I'm talking players like the two I just mentioned, and players like Renee and Rhonda Curtin and the Brodt sisters. I mean, these are just unbelievable hockey talents that help grow the game of hockey. And so I think that it's fitting that now in the present day, Erica's working for the Wild and helping facilitate more fan engagement, getting more people to the building. You know, and so it's going to be great to chat with her, to hear her backstory. I know on shows past, you know, Gigi Marvin, another player I would consider one of the all-time greats, was on this show. I love hearing how they came to the game and what stoked the fire at a young age, because I think if you're a guy and you're listening to this show, you just assume that hockey was always there. And I think people forget as recent as the 90s, those 30 years ago, that wasn't the case, that the girls grew up having to play against the boys or play another game. You know, and ringette was a game. Bandy was a game. There wasn't girls high school hockey, and it's changed dramatically. And now with the evolution of the PWHL, there are a lot of layers here to the conversation we'll have today with Erica McKenzie. But I can just tell you that having watched her up close and personal, she was a remarkably gifted player. And what I remember most about her is the way she competed. Teams would always put 2 and 3 players out there to kind of layer up against her. And, you know, a lot like Kaprizov, she welcomed some of that contact. She welcomed some of that extra attention. And when the game was at its biggest moments, she rose up and produced the biggest plays of the game. Kirill has that. She absolutely had that. She went on to have a terrific career internationally and playing for the Golden Gophers. And just she knows the game and she loves the game. That's what makes her such a great I think, asset for the Minnesota Wild, having worked there for 15 years, is she truly loves the game of hockey, loves the Minnesota Wild. So we're going to have a great conversation with Erica McKenzie. And before we get to Erica, let's talk a little bit about the Minnesota Wild as we are recording this. We just got back from another brief road trip. It feels like we've been on the road for a month. We had those first 2 home games and then that brief 3-game homestand. So 5 home games, everything else out on the road. And I thought the Wild getting 5 out of 6 points on this most recent trip was really, really impressive. And listen, you look at the schedule and you see San Jose, Anaheim, and Chicago, and I had some buddies, well, that's just 6 points, free points. I'm like, no, not in this league. That just doesn't work out that way, especially when you're playing back-to-back with travel, 3 games in 4 nights, changing time zones. And it showed. I mean, it did in the game over the weekend at Chicago. The club clearly didn't have their best stuff. The legs weren't where they needed to be, but they found a way in the third period to go out there and battle and at least get to overtime. And so they're in a great spot right now. Winnipeg is an absolute wagon. They won again most recently here midweek out in New York against the Rangers. They're 15-1. but that'll level off. And I think for where we're at right now, I think Minnesota, Dallas, and Winnipeg look like they're going to be the three at the top of the division. Now we'll see with Colorado and Nashville. You always, worry about either one of those teams catching fire. I just haven't seen it in their play so far this year. And so the Wild look legit. This looks sustainable. I think their goaltending's in a good place. I don't think that's going to change. Their depth is showing. They've got all four lines making contributions. Yes, they have to stay healthy. Yes, Jonas Brodin right now is a little bit banged up. But overall, with the additions that Bill Guerin has made, specifically Lauko, I really am in love with what this guy brings to the table. I get it. He plays 9, 10, 11 minutes every night, but the penalty kill, he's impressive. The speed he brings, the grit he brings. There's an element there that really, I think, gets everybody's intensity up a notch. Great to see Ryan Hartman healthy and making contributions. And I think this team right now is for real. As we sit here a month into the season, I think people always point to the American Thanksgiving, which is in a couple of weeks here, is kind of that point in the season where when you look at the standings and you're in the top 8, it's like an 80 percentile that you're going to be a playoff team. And if you're towards the top, that thing goes up to 95 and even close to 100. So impressive start, a lot of work to be done, still a lot of hockey to be played, but I think watching this and being around it every day, I think it is sustainable, and I'm really fired up for where this season is going. So we're going to have a lot of cool guests throughout the year to get their opinions on this as well. So before we get to Eric, I got to tell you about my good friend John Schweitz. He works for the Minnesota Masonic Charities in town, places like the Cancer Center over at the U of M, the Children's Hospital, of course, the Masonic Home in Bloomington. These guys do tremendous work right here in Minnesota, in our communities. It's the largest fraternal organization on the planet. They the Masons consistently answer the call when it comes to charitable needs. And John Schweitz, a big part of our podcast, can't thank him enough for his support. And check him out on the Kindness Chronicles, which is one of those charitable endeavors that he takes on with his job with the Masonic facility here in Minnesota. And as I mentioned, Onyx Hunt, if you're going to go on the hunt here, why not have that device? Why not have technology on your side? Onyx Hunt, a new part of our show here.
We mentioned Onyx Hunt earlier. I want to let you know that deer hunting season is here, and it's time to own your odds with Onyx Hunt, the GPS hunting app trusted by millions of hunters. With the Hunt app, you'll have access to nationwide public and private land ownership information, waypoints, tracks, and much more, all at your fingertips. Go to onyxmaps.com/hunt to sign up today.
If you want to be a part of it too, you know one guy. There's only one guy to contact. That's the White Dog, Andrew Height. You can email him at aheydt over at talknorth.com and get your company on our show, and we'll try to elevate your business as best we can. Speaking of elevation, we're going to elevate one of the all-time greats. It's Erica McKenzie. They call her Easy Mac. She's next here on Wooden Sticks. Welcome back. We are on Wooden Sticks here, recording from the Aquarius Home Services studio. As I mentioned in our introduction, very excited to talk with one of my dear friends who has worked for the Minnesota Wild for a long time, and we've been side by side on a couple of road trips, including during the preseason this year. She is the great Erica McKenzie. Easy Mac, as I call you. How are you, young lady?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Gore.
I got to explain the Easy Mac thing because even my daughters now, when I was texting with them, know your nickname. And when she was at Hastings and she was on the ice, the offense came so easy for the Raiders because of McKenzie's skill set. She became Easy Mac, and she's been that ever since. And, our paths crossed way back in the day when I was coaching women's college hockey. I knew I wasn't going to get a chance to bring you to St. Thomas. You were an elite player that was, you would go on to be a Miss Hockey Award winner. But, I remember vividly spending many a night inside that awesome arena you grew up playing in. And I loved watching you. I loved watching the girls' game grow in the early 2000s. There's just something about Hastings that when you walk in that building, it takes you back to old school hockey.
I agree. It's just a great barn. Like, there's so much tradition in Hastings and just the community in general. It was a great place to play. When you talk about coming and watching the girls' game, just how much it's grown since even when I was there, it's changed drastically. And I mean, even though there's always room to continue to improve and grow, it's fun to think back. I mean, just the community would get behind both the boys and the girls program in it. And, Saturday nights, it was a packed house and everyone came out to watch the girls games. And it was just unique and a ton of fun.
How did you come to the game of hockey? I don't think I've ever asked you this, but how did you pick hockey when you were a youngster? What drew you to the game?
My brother played, and so I think I just wanted to do everything he did. He was 6 years older than me, and his best friend was Jeff Tafe, who actually he's from Hastings, played at the University of Minnesota, and then he had a stint with the Wild as well. But
Yep.
Those two, they were both the best men in each other's weddings, so he was like a second brother to me, and I followed them everywhere. So I really started out, they didn't really want me to play with them. They put me in goal and just shot pucks and tennis balls at me, but that's kind of how I got started and really just loved the game, and I wanted to play. At that time, there weren't any girls playing. We didn't have a girls hockey team, so I started. His name's Mark Chorney. He was actually the coach. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but his son Taylor Chorney, he played in the
Yes.
NHL, played for the Caps for a while, and then Mark also played in the NHL. And he told my parents, he said, just sign her up, and I'll make sure she's on Taylor's team, and we'll take care of her. And so really I was the only girl that played all the way up until high school on that team or with those teams, and just made such, great friends, and some went on to play in the NHL. But that was really how I got started, and I just got hooked on it. It was just such a fun game, and the things you learned about being a good teammate and all those different things it was a great experience for me. And even looking back now, those guys just treated me so well, and I was pretty lucky to have a group of people like that in Hastings.
Any other sports that when you were growing up that you played that, maybe you thought, if hockey doesn't pan out, and I know you were a really good hockey player at a young age, but was there ever any doubt, were there other sports that you played? Like, I know you're a really good golfer, but were there other sports where you were like, I think I'm going to be a hockey player. I think I've got a chance to go places, and we'll get into your journey through the U of M, but that maybe had you thinking there was multiple options?
Yeah, I mean, I was a golfer, and I played a lot of golf. My dad got me out on the course with my brother super young. I mean, I was, as early as I can remember, I was probably golfing before I started actual skating with the guys. I mean, I had a club in my hand at an early age, but I liked golf. And continued, I went on and ended up winning the state high school tournament and was recruited from the U. But that was one of those things you had to move. Like, if I wanted to go somewhere in there, I had to move to Arizona or somewhere down south where you're playing all year round. And there was something that was different about golf. It was more of like, hey, I'm good at this and I want to beat everyone. But it was the individual aspect of it just didn't get me excited. Like, I loved going to battle with a group of people and a team. Where golf, it was kind of like it was you against the course, and you're really competing to get under par, or you're competing against that instead of an individual or doing something as a group. So golf just never got it for me. I think when I think back, my mom always probably wished I would have, because maybe I'd still be playing today, but it wasn't what hockey was.
And so let's get back to hockey. When you were a little kid, and you can't pick your brother, because I think the brother angle is legit. And I coached a lot of girls at St. Thomas where that was kind of how they came to the game as the girls and women's game was evolving. Having exposure within the family to that kind of stoked that fire. But if you had to pick somebody at a young age that you looked up to as a player that you tried to mimic your game after, who was that player?
That's tough. Well, my favorite player, we didn't have the Wild when I was growing up, wasn't here. So it was the Detroit Red Wings. They were my favorite team. Mm-hmm. And Sergei Fedorov. I loved watching him play. I don't know if that rings a bell for you, but I loved watching him play. I just liked the skill set that he had. And that was fun for me to watch. I remember always turning on the TV and seeing the battles of the Avs versus Detroit. That was always a thing. And it was fun to watch. And I really tried to, I think that was the player that I was like, he's so great. And so it'd probably have to be him.
And like you, his skating ability opened up the rink. Like, he had all kinds of skill, but that skill doesn't do you anything unless you can use your speed to get to open space. And like you, when he went on the ice, whether it was the Avalanche or whoever Detroit was playing, they had to have layers of defense to defend him. And I just remember watching you specifically in high school and how teams would defend you, Erica, with 2 and 3 players legitimately on every shift, kind of layering to try to stop you. Your speed was a separator, kind of like Fedorov's was, and that got you to the open ice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's hard to think back. I think also, and you know this from watching the girls' game, just the parity has gotten so much tighter than what it was
Yep.
before. Like the Natalie Darwitz and the Chrissy Windells, you just don't see that anymore because of like you could take over a game, right? I could step on the ice and say, hey, we're going to win this game and I could take that over, which nowadays you don't have maybe those superstars like that, but you also don't have the girls that are, really maybe struggling that play on the third line. I think everyone now, when you talk about skating, that ability and the talent has just gotten so much higher, which is exciting for the girls' game. But just, I think it's a different game from today than it was before. But I say speed kills. Like if you have hands and you have the skill level, there's something powerful about being able to skate, and just having that skill set is so important.
Yeah, we watch Kirill Kaprizov on a nightly basis face layers of defense, and that you speak of parity in the game on the girls' side. Look at the parity in the National Hockey League. Every team tries to put their best 5 players out there when Kirill's on the ice, and it's amazing to me watching his edges. I've watched hockey. Well, I'm 57. I started really watching hockey when I was 5 or 6, so I got 5 decades of data. I have rarely in my life, Erica, seen a player that can do what Kirill can do with his edges and with his physical play. I think people don't understand how physically strong he is, because when he goes into those corners and when he's working around the net and throughout the offensive zone, the way he's able to kind of circle the wagons, he's getting hit, he's getting cross-checked, and carrying the puck and making plays where you're getting cross-checked and hit, it's not easy to do. This guy makes it look a lot easier than it really is.
100%. And it's just his balance, even when his center of gravity, like he's just so strong, right? I mean, I kind of think people necessarily wouldn't say he's like the fastest player in the NHL, right? We know that, but his strength, it just sets him apart. It is so hard to take the puck away from him or knock him off his skates. It's so impressive. I mean, night in and night out, I think I leave the arena being like, wow, like he's something special. And being able to control the puck, hold on to the puck, when a lot of these guys, right, there's so many of them that are bigger than him. It's like he is just on a different level.
I think you can say with confidence as you watch him right now, kind of getting to the prime of his career. And I don't know how many times, in wild history we've been able to say this, but this guy is a shoo-in, is a lock to be a Hockey Hall of Famer. And I think of that as kind of the holy grace. Like, I've been to Toronto. I've been to the Hockey Hall of Fame. If you're a hockey fan and you listen to the show on a regular basis, somehow, some way, get your butt up to Toronto to see this place. It's incredible. But you get the Gordie Howes, the Bobby Orrs, the Wayne Gretzky's, all the stuff. They have an exact locker room that mimics the Montreal Canadiens locker room from the 70s. That team that went on to win all those Stanley Cups that included Jacques Lemaire, who has a tie to the Minnesota Wild. So I look at him as a lock for Hall of Fame down the road. And you and I have a cool connection to the Hall of Fame as recent as this week, because our mutual friends, Chrissy Wendell and Natalie Darwitz, went into the Hall of Fame. And I got to tell you, watching that ceremony on Monday, being that my roots take me back to 1998 when we started the women's program at St. Thomas, and I was lucky enough to get to watch Natalie and Chrissy on a regular basis. And I know what a rink rat you are, and whether it's competing with them or against them or just watching the games, to see mutual friends go into the Hall of Fame in Toronto, like, I can't even fathom this from where we came from in the late 90s for girls hockey in Minnesota. Erica, I got to tell you, this is huge.
It's incredible. I agree. I mean, Chrissy and Natalie, I speak so highly of them because they were just phenomenal hockey players, but they were just great people too. And so I think when you find that mix, it's just it's a great combo, and you can't get better than that. But it is something so special. Like, you almost have to pinch yourself to think, like, those two are in the Hall of Fame. They are up in Toronto. You see their names. I mean, that is a special thing. And they came from Minnesota, right? Egan and Brooklyn Park, and just skating alongside of them. I still remember when I was younger that they were just great teammates. And that was the other thing. Like, they were great as themselves. I mean, they're the best in the world. I would still argue this, but they made everyone else around them better. And I think that was super special. And they wanted that. They knew they were going to get their points and get their tallies, but they knew it was a team game, and they wanted everyone else to excel as well. But it's just fun to see what they've done with the game. And, Natalie coaching and being the GM, and, she was at the U in Hamlin, and she's just done so much for the game and has grown it so far. And same with Chrissy and Johnny. I mean, you think they have now a daughter that's playing for Hill Murray that's in the state tournament, and talk about a whole lifetime of change, right? That was them, and now they get to see their daughter play in the state high school tournament. I just think it's pretty cool.
The game has come so far, and I vividly remember when I first got hired at St. Thomas. We had been a club program, and in 1998, when I took over as the head coach there, I kind of inherited a roster of players that were club players. I mean, these were girls that grew up playing other sports. I had girls on my roster that played high school basketball up in Hibbing. And so making that transformation and seeing the game those first couple of years, which was the late 90s and then the early 2000s, and just seeing how the game has grown. And I look at players like you, and I mean this sincerely. Like, I look at players like you and players like Natalie and players like Chrissy and the Curtin sisters and the Broats. Like, they became instantly, you guys all became players that little girls would look up to. And instead of saying, I want to be like, name the boy on the whatever varsity team was in that neighborhood, it was, no, I want to be like Erica McKenzie. I want to be like Winnie Broad. To me, that is where we saw the biggest movement in girls hockey, because they finally had these unbelievable role models to look up to. And being a little kid in Minnesota, when you have that, the game is going to explode. And it did. And now to see where it's gone, I look back at those years, Erica, and you guys were a part of a big movement here.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's so kind of you to say, but it is true. Like, you look back and you saw these girls emerge from the boys programs, because again, like kind of I said, that you just didn't see a girls hockey team, right? So if you wanted to play, you had to play with the boys. And then all of a sudden, I'll still remember my first year playing girls high school hockey. They started talking about this girl named Chrissy Wendell and this girl named Natalie Darowitz. And, coming from the boys, I didn't really know what to expect. But when they hit the ice, it's like it tilted. I mean, they changed the game. And you start talking about the Curtin sisters and the Broats, and I mean, you name them. It was special. And what was even cooler is we'd get together. It was and play on, Sunday nights in scrimmage. And I was just this little, I was young. I would think I was in 8th, 9th grade at the time. And some of these girls were seniors or juniors. And just what it did for the game when you saw that talent level get on the ice. I'd go to the high school game where the puck didn't leave my stick, and then all of a sudden you're playing with the best girls in Minnesota at that level. I mean, you think of the ones that are in the Hall of Fame and, continue to move on, and All-Americans. It was like, whoa, it was an eye-opener, right? And that's what you want. And now I feel like in high school, obviously not to that level it was when we played together on Sunday nights and Tuesdays and Thursdays, but it's getting closer to that, right? You're not going end to end. You got to move the puck. You have to and have a little hockey sense, and it's just changed so much. And I think that's exciting, but I agree with you. It's like, that's what you want. You want to think, oh, that girl did it, and now there's opportunity for me. Even the PWHL, right? Back then, I thought I was going to play for the men's golfer team because they didn't have a girls hockey team, and I'm sure my dad laughed, but then all of a sudden there was a golfer team, and they built their very own ring for those girls, and you continue to see it go. Now there's a professional. You see girls in the NHL working for front offices, and that's what you want to see. You want little girls, like you said, say, hey, I want to be able to do that, and you can see you can because there was a path for other individuals.
You mentioned the PWHL, and I was really impressed with what they put together last year, and now the buzz around the nicknames coming into the fold and the talk of expansion and the crowds we saw last year. I attended a couple of games, including one in the finals, and I was just blown away by the support that they were able to garner. And I think it's awesome for the game of hockey. And it wasn't just little girls in the rink. There were little boys in the rink that were idolizing these girls, which I thought was really neat. So for you, being that now you're on the other side of it, you're working for the Minnesota Wild, is it bittersweet knowing that maybe had this thing started just a little bit sooner, it could have been a part of your career because your skill set would have got you there. And I know it's great for the game now, but I think for a lot of you, and I think Winnie Brote comes to mind too, like, certain players would have been a part of this that could have played, and you guys had a chance to play pro hockey, but it just seems like right now, Erica, the PWHL, they've learned from other mistakes along the way. They're in NHL markets. They're in NHL buildings. It just feels like they've got it figured out. And I know for a lot of you players, it's got to be a little bit bittersweet.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I remember for the first game for the PWHL when it was home, I went to it and Natalie Dart's mom actually said, Dar was like, hey, come up to the suite, and we kind of hung out. And her mom said that exact same thing. She was like, gosh, aren't you jealous that, this isn't you, or a little envious? And I think maybe a little bit. I think, you always wish that you were able to do certain things that maybe others had the opportunity to do. But there's something in me where I almost feel like you kind of helped pave the way in order for this to get here. And so I never can look back and say, we didn't have different opportunities, because we did. I mean, I was able to go to the University of Minnesota, win a national championship. I mean, go meet the president, and they had a very own arena built for us. Like, there were so many great things that I was still able to be a part of. And in some way, I hope, I felt like I had a part in now what these girls have to look up to or be able to play in it. But I just can't get, of course, envious. It's so great for these girls and I love watching it, but I also believe I was on my own path for a reason, and I don't think I would trade where I am right now for anything. And part of it is just part of that journey that, maybe the path that I was on and different than, individuals that are playing in the PWHL right now, but just so excited for them. And I agree. It's exciting. You see the boys wearing the jerseys of the girls. Like, yes. That just wasn't a thing even 5 years ago. Right. And that's exciting to me. That's just showing there is a movement, and there's going to be so many more opportunities as we continue to grow the game. And we're lucky. I mean, we are the state of hockey here, and our community in Minnesota, they just get behind people. And I think that's so special.
So I want to take you back in time. I want you to take me through kind of the backstory and maybe one particular game in high school. I'll give you an example on my end to make it easier for you. So I've been asked this question before on other shows, and they're like, okay, one game, you can relive it. What would it be? And for me, I always pick the same game. I pick a section final game because I was a huge North Stars fan. And when the North Stars left and they eventually tore down the Met Center, it like ripped the heart straight out of my chest because I loved that building. I had so many great childhood memories, and I got to play a section final in front of a full house at the Met Center against Sean Podine and Rochester John Marshall. It was just a bucket list, like dream of a lifetime night. And if I could go back and have one night to relive, because I'm 57 now, I can barely remember anything from that game. I would love to go back and do it. So take me back to one high school game when you were at Hastings where you'd love to just go back and relive it one more time. Maybe you had 4 goals. Maybe you beat an arch rival. What would be that one game?
That's tough. The funny thing was when you just said your age and then you can barely remember, I think it's tough to maybe pick out one. I think I'll go back and say I just had such a great experience playing for Hastings in a small town or smaller, and it just had so much tradition. And so part of it was I just loved when the team or the community would come out to the games. And again, we talk about that. That was for a girls' game, and that barn was packed. You had to get there before the puck dropped just to even get a seat. And so I think I remember the band playing and just the community getting behind our team. And that was game in and game out, which we were so fortunate for. But I think when you start looking at one specific game, there is probably there's two of them, and both of them were sections. Hastings, we weren't expected to go anywhere or do anything. I think I was in eighth grade. It was one of my eighth grade. It was my first year in. And that was the year we had Roseville in our section, so the Curtin sisters were there.
Oof.
We had Egan, and Natalie was playing, and we had South St. Paul, which South St. Paul was a powerhouse in girls hockey back in the day. And we had beat, Roseville got upset, so they were out of it. And we were playing against South St. Paul, and we ended up beating them 2-0. And it was a barn burner. I mean, the South St. Paul arena was packed, and we had no business winning that game, right? I mean, it was defense to the core. We ended up scoring 2 goals to beat them, and it was probably one of the biggest upset. And still, when I talked to some of those girls, they were just like, they were kind of thinking, hey, this is going to be a walk. And we were pumped. I mean, the place was going nuts. And then we played Egan, and that was to go to the section final game, and we brought them into overtime. I think it was it was overtime, and we brought them into it, and we like you kind of said with me, we had 2 girls that just followed Natalie around, and that was back when like Leanne Denman and those girls were still on that team, and Egan was a powerhouse. It wasn't just Natalie; they had other girls that either went Division 1 or Division 3, and we held our own. And I think it was the reason why I love that the most is I look back as a team, what we were able to accomplish when no one thought we were going to do anything. At that time, I was in 8th grade. People didn't really know who I was. And we came out and said, hey, we're something to recognize and to look out for in years to come. And it was just an experience that I'll never forget.
And I think people underestimate how difficult it is to just be a part of a varsity team when you're in 8th grade. Like, you know, you had a unique skill set that allowed you to play at a young age and compete at the varsity level, but you're in that locker room as a little kid, really, and you're surrounded by some girls that are like 17 and 18. They're like adults getting ready to go to college. How was it for you? Like, how did you find your way? Because as long as I've known you, you've always had a great personality. You've always been kind of outgoing, but I imagine when you're in 8th grade, you're in that locker room, you're probably not able to be quite as outgoing.
Yeah, I think part of it was, again, going back to just we had a great group of girls. So they welcomed me in, and I think I was one that I went in. I didn't want to act like, hey, I think I'm better than anyone. I knew I could learn things from other individuals, but we had great leaders. And part of it was, I think I was just so young that I was blinded by the age factor. Like, I went in every game, I was just so competitive. I wanted to score. I wanted to get 3 points, whatever it was, every single game. And there wasn't a game that I thought we weren't going to win, which was different from Hastings because before I got there, we weren't very good. I think we had won a couple games, but I went in thinking every game we had a chance to win or we were winning the game. And so I think that kind of got people to jump on board being like, hey, if this 8th grader is this confident, so am I. Or look what she can do. You know, maybe I can start doing a little bit more to make myself better. And just as a team, I think we had great leaders, but our coaches were just they were just phenomenal coaches, and I was super lucky to have them throughout my career. And I think they kind of brought us together as well. Like, it didn't matter your age. We were all there to respect each other and get better. But I definitely learned a lot. And part of it, I'll go back and say this again. It was almost like I was blinded to that, being so much younger than everyone. I was there to play hockey, and I wanted everyone else to be able to experience that same thing. And you know, I just looked to the future. Like, I wanted to do bigger and greater things with that. And I think you kind of got people to have that same mentality and that attitude when you carry that.
I'm going to put you on the spot. I don't know how good your memory is, but it is a big moment in time. Do you remember where, like, the rink, who you were playing, and the circumstances around your very first goal as a varsity player at Hastings?
I don't. That's a good question. I do not remember it.
You scored too many goals, Mac.
Yeah, I don't remember it. I'm sure it was, my 8th grade year, and sometimes I think I'll look back, but I don't remember it. And I kind of think that was a good thing. Like, in 8th grade, I really was so much about the team. Like, I knew we were going to be successful if I scored goals and played well, but I had a lot to learn as an eighth grader. Like, that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to score goals. And I had to learn, like, if I wanted to continue to grow and, get to the next level, that wasn't going to be the only thing. I had to learn how to play defense. And I'm sure you remember, I didn't always want to. Like, I wanted to pick up the puck and go end to end. And so I always give hats off to the coaches that I had, but they're like, hey, if you want to be as good as a Chrissy and a Natalie, you got to learn how to play without the puck as well. And so I for whatever reason, was very into the team game of it. And of course, I wanted to win. I wanted to score goals, but I slowly learned it's not a one-person show. You have to have everyone. Your goalie has to be able to stop pucks. There's all these intangibles that you have to do. And so part of that I do think is like why I can't remember it, because I was so about how we were developing and growing as a team. And that's probably one of the reasons why we had such a great year, my first year into high school hockey.
So you're a rock star player. Let's move on to when you're a senior. You got teams probably all over the country that would love to have you come play for them. How did you end up being a golfer, and what were some of the other schools that had you at least looking that direction in case you didn't become a golfer?
Yeah, I was actually one of the first. So I verbally committed to the University of Minnesota as a sophomore in high school. So I knew I was going to the U as a sophomore. And I remember I would get letters from everywhere. I mean, I don't know if there was a school that I didn't hear from that had a women's hockey program, but I think deep down, I always wanted to be a gopher. I kind of mentioned it before we even had a women's team. I was like, I'm going to play for the men's gopher team, which is obviously comical now, but that's what I thought. And so I did start looking like even just I had some of the other schools maybe out east, but I wanted to stay close. I mean, my parents had just done so much for me to get to that point. I wanted them to come and be able to enjoy this journey with me and watch the games. And in all honesty, I mean, Ritter Arena, when they built that was just a phenomenal venue for us to play in. And it felt, even when you only got, 1,500 people and there were 2,000, it felt packed. And so in the back of my head, I think I really did always know I was going to go there. Chrissy went there and Natalie, and I had become close with them throughout playing on the U.S. team. And it was almost like a no-brainer. So I think when we were starting to talk about numbers, I remember I joked because I had an older brother and older sister. My mom really could care less where I was going. I remember her saying, you can go wherever you want, but I'm not paying for school. So pick the one that's going to do that for, and I remember my dad laughing, saying, I think she'll be able to, I don't think that's a worry, And so it was a great time in my life, and being a senior, knowing that, hey, I was going to go to the University of Minnesota and be able to play with these individuals and just gain so much experience and really lessons in general. I always say the game of hockey just correlates so much to even what I'm doing right now and just different leadership roles. And so really all the coaching staff, the staff we had at the U, they were just great. And not for a second I ever look back and say, I wish I would have gone somewhere else. But for sure, I always had my eyes out on the Duluth, right? That was a big time school then, Madison, Wisconsin. Schools like that. But I think I knew I wanted to stay close to home, and it was the right fit for me. And I was lucky my parents and my family, brother and sister, they were able to come to, if not all games, the majority of them.
Yeah, and you're right about Ritter Arena. I in my time at St. Thomas, for a long time, St. Kate's used that facility as their home barn, and it's a wonderful place to watch hockey. In fact, I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers with what I'm about to say, and I understand the other side of the argument, but when the girls' high school tournament was at Ritter Arena, and that place was wall-to-wall people, and both bands were playing, and that noise was reverberating, I don't know that you can top that atmosphere for a state tournament. I get why they play at the X, Erica, but those years, oh my gosh, was that fun.
Yeah, you can't beat it. And I totally agree with you. I get why people want to play at the Xcel Energy Center. And it's a great place to play, and the Wild play there. But there was nothing like playing at Ritter Arena. And I remember my senior year, that was the last year they had it at Ritter before moving it over. And it was packed. I remember a game I couldn't even get into. And that my senior year, we lost to South St. Paul in the section finals. And that was back in the day where it was Maggie Fisher and Felicia Nelson. And I mean, they were just, I think they hadn't lost in like over 70 games, or they had set some record that they hadn't lost in. And you couldn't get a seat into Ritter Arena because it was that packed. And I always say that's what people want to play in front of. You want the house to be packed, you want it to be loud, the bands are there, the atmosphere is just so special. And I think while it was at Ritter, it's tough to top, it's tough to beat that.
Okay, so now for our listeners that maybe don't know the details, tell us what year you started with the Minnesota Wild and what your job description would be.
Yeah. So I started with the Wild right before the Olympics. So going into that, I was centralized here in Minnesota. That was before the Vancouver Olympic Games, and right before that, I had torn my MCL. Rehabbed, and I ended up not making the Vancouver Olympics Games, and I was devastated. I mean, that was like the world ending to me, is what I felt like. Right, you put all that work into it, and I was devastated, but I ended up using some of my connections and just people I've met. And long story short, there was an internship that opened up in community, and Brad Bombardier was actually the vice president of community relations at the time. And so I had heard about it, and I had kind of tossed my name, and I had interviewed, and they're like, Brad called me and said, "Hey, we want to offer you this job." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'll work for free. I'll be there tomorrow." Like, that's how excited I was. And it was just such a great opportunity to work with some really great individuals. So that was back in 2010 when I had started so it was the 09-10 season with the Minnesota Wild. And I was so fortunate. I just worked with some great people and gained some really good experience in a short time. And then there ended up being a position open in the sales and service department under one of the leaders that I report into now, Maria Troji. And I wanted it more than anything. I was like, did everything I could and felt like I was, could do the job. And luckily she thought that too and hired me, and just kind of since then worked my way up. I think I mentioned it before. So now I'm the senior director of ticket sales and service, and really focus on the membership side of things. So any new business and retention efforts that touch a membership, that's kind of where my main focus is. But really our goal is we want to fill the building every night. We want this place to be rocking. When we talk about atmosphere at Ritter Arena, you want that same thing here in Minnesota at the Xcel Energy Center. You want it to feel like we are the state of hockey, and it is something special, and I love being a part of it. So now it's kind of like you're on the other side of things. So before, you were on the ice, and it was that type of environment. And now I'm on the exact opposite. And my goal is to bring that experience that I so wanted when I was playing to everyone's experience today. And so I love working with people. I know you kind of mentioned it. I feel like I'm pretty outgoing. I'm a people person, and it really couldn't fit me any better. And so fortunate to be here, and with just things I've learned from my direct leader and individuals that I work alongside. I feel so privileged and lucky to be here.
Well, 15 years, and every time I see you, and this is from day one all the way through, because I've been covering the Wild and doing my gig since 06. Wherever I see you, whether it's a game night, whether it's a charitable event, a team function, you've always got a smile on your face. Like, you are always so engaged in whatever is going on that night. And you love it. I know you love the game, but you love your job. And I think that comes out. And I think that makes you even better at what you do, because I have never seen you have a bad day at either the X or the Wild offices. And that's saying something, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I mean, honestly, right back at you. Like, I think people draw to your energy, and that's what it's about. Like, people want to be around you. You mentioned it. We brought some season ticket members on the team playing for preseason game, and it's like the energy they attract to you. And I think it's a real skill. And you want people to be like, oh, I want to be in the same room as a Kevin Gorg or Erica McKenzie, and people want to be around you, and they feed off your energy. And I mean, you kind of nailed it. I love what I do. I love that I come in every day and it's a new challenge, and, it's not easy, but I'm I feel so fortunate with the people that I get to work with and our fans. Like our fans are just so special, and they are what make it, right? And you've heard even the Wild
Yeah.
players say time and time again in your post game interviews with you is the crowd was awesome, or we're so lucky to play in front of these people, and it's no different. I feel fortunate that I get to work with these individuals and these fans, and just lucky. And so I think when you come in with a positive attitude every day and you say, hey, I could be doing a lot of worse things, right? I could be selling vacuum cleaners or who knows what, but instead I'm selling hockey in the state of hockey. And I feel pretty lucky.
Yeah, someone told me a long time ago, if you love what you do, you're never going to work a day in your life. And now that I've done this for 2 decades, I'm with you. I don't take it for granted. Like I literally every day have something where I'm like, God, if I would have as a little kid, if you would have told me that I was on an airplane flying with an NHL team and I was going to watch their game up on the glass in the Zamboni tunnel, I would have told you were nuts. Like I would have thought I had a better chance of being an astronaut and going to the moon. Like it is one of those jobs where I literally, 19 years in, still I have to pinch myself once in a while. Today I was riding a Zamboni with Brock Faber and Ryan Hartman, and we had a whole, Thanksgiving spread on that Zamboni. And it was just a fun little commercial we're doing. But it's crazy. Like the job it's different every day. It's exciting every day. And the cool part is when you get time off, you get to do cool things. And I have to ask you before I get to the hot seat here, and I got 3 tough questions coming. We're both Swifties. How was Taylor in Miami?
Yes, I told you that I went, and it was awesome. Huge Swiftie. And it was so much fun. I went down to Miami the weekend after the home opener. So it was perfect timing. As most people know, we had a little break in our schedule in October after our first 2 home games and went down to see a friend, and we were able to go and see the show. And it was just an absolute blast at the Hard Rock Stadium. And it was so much fun. And I give her huge props. Like I was exhausted. Like after the show, I felt like I needed a nap for like 8 hours. And then she goes on and does 2 more shows the next 2 nights. I mean, I think I screamed for like 3 hours straight. And so it was just a lot of fun. And I always say just in that environment, like just a bunch of positive people, right? They're all there having fun, tons of energy, and it doesn't get much better than that. And I love being in those environments. And so, hats off to that Eras tour. I know there's only a couple more stops left, but very fun for all the fans that got to go. And you see even some of the professional players, the NHL guys, they're going to the show. So it's lots of fun. And just like hockey, it brings people together.
I became a Swiftie about 12 or 13 years ago. So my daughters now, Erica, are 29, 27, and 20. So we're going back to when my youngest was probably, I don't know, she was probably 6, 7 years old. So it was her first concert, and the older 2 were like pushing this, like we have to go. So Taylor Swift was coming to the Xcel Energy Center, and all I remember it was an incredible show. And I remember having Annika, my youngest, on my shoulders throughout most of the show because we sat in the back row of the lower bowl. But the final song, there was like actual rain on the stage. It was an incredible performance. So I grew up with the Madonna era, right? In the 80s, if you went to a Madonna concert, there were costume changes. It was theatrical. Every song was a hit. And I realized going to this Taylor Swift show, and it was never on my radar, but all of a sudden, like it rang that bell for me. Like this is Madonna, a cleaner version, obviously, but in this now generation, no, really, it is. So I'll tell you one more thing, and we'll get to the hot seat. Last year, when the Wild opened the season, their first road trip was in Canada, up in Toronto. And so I wanted to go see the movie, the Eras Tour movie. I got the last ticket available in Toronto at this beautiful theater. And I walk in there not knowing what to expect. I knew it was sold out because I got the last ticket online. And they had a bar, like a real, like not open, but a bar where you could buy drinks in the front of the theater. And people were like singing and dancing and screaming the whole time. And I'm like, it's a movie. She can't hear you. But my point is, the fans were just so into this movie, and the show is what you got to see in person in Miami. It was spectacular.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love that story. That cracks me up. But it's a unique thing, and it was a blast. I know people always give me a hard time that I traveled down to Miami for the show, but it was an experience, and I love seeing things like that. I just love when people come together, and it's just a fun experience, and that's what music does, and just like sports in general. So a lot of fun, and yeah, that's a great story.
Okay, the hat trick hot seat. 3 quick questions, top of the head answers. There are no wrong answers, but we want this to be from the heart. You mentioned you were a golfer. I know you're a great golfer. So if you could have next summer your pick of any course in the Minnesota Twin Cities area, whatever, any course in our state where you can invite any 3 people, anybody in the entire world to play in your foursome, Easy Mac, who are golfers 2, 3, and 4? What golf course are you playing? Let's tee it up.
All right, that is a hot seat. I got to say the Royal. I think the Royal is a tough
favorite course.
It's a lot of fun, and it's just in tremendous shape. So I'm going to say the Royal. If any 3 people, well, I'm going to say Kevin Gorg. Okay, you're coming along.
Yes, I made the cut.
Yeah, you're coming along, and then probably Wayne Gretzky.
Good pick.
And if I had to pick a 4th, there's so many. That's a tough one. You know what? I'm going to say, that's tough. 4th person. I got KG.
So you got to think of chemistry. Gretzky. We got Gretzky, we got Gorg, we got McKenzie. Who fits with us? It's got to be good chemistry.
Who gets to sit with us and play?
Maybe the Flower?
Well, you know what? That would be a good one. You know what? We'll say, let's go back and from the beginning. Maybe we'll take, you know what? I'm taking Flower, and that's not a cop-out. That is
that's a good pick.
That is a very strong foursome. I think, we could go head to toe against anyone else, but just spectacular what Flower's doing right now, and it's so fun to watch him play. And as he, who knows what's going to happen, but to have I believe a future Hall of Famer. That's pretty unique. So I'm going to add Flower to our foursome.
And the greatest hockey player of all time, Wayne Gretzky. To me, you can make the case for Bobby Orr. You can start talking Gordie Howe. That's all good. Yeah. But I grew up in a different era, and this is my guy, and he's always going to be, in my eyes, the greatest player to ever play the game. And we still get to watch him on national TV in those intermissions, and it's really cool. All right, so now we've covered the golf part of it. Twin Cities dinner spot. So whether you're going out with some friends, or maybe you've got people coming in from out of town that have never been to the Twin Cities, and you're going to recommend a really cool place for them to have dinner, what spot are you going to send them to?
That's a good question. I'm not the biggest foodie. So, I love going out to restaurants with friends, but I'm kind of like, hey, where does everyone want to go? I would say my favorite Mexican spot is called Rojo. So it's in St. Louis Park. They have the best queso. They have great chips and salsa and just a great atmosphere. So I do love Rojo, but if you're going down to maybe Minneapolis, St. Paul, I think Parlor Burger, they have one of the best burgers that you can possibly have. So I'd probably send them to one of those 2 spots just because they're my favorite.
Parlor's spectacular, and it's walking distance from the X. But I got to tell you, there aren't a lot of great Mexican spots in the Twin Cities, and that is a very sneaky good spot over there in the West End. So good recommendation. Final question will be this: bucket list vacation spot you haven't been to yet, but before it's all said and done, you have to get where?
I think Africa. I would love to I would love to go to an African safari. I think seeing the animals up close. I'm not a great flyer, so that's a long flight, but I've seen that up close.
You are not a great flyer. I can attest to that.
Yeah, I know, but they say it's spectacular, so I think that's definitely on my bucket list.
Well done. I knew you'd, crush the hat trick hot seat. Erica, always fun to connect with you. We can still, as we sit here now early in the hockey season, not only dream about playoffs for the Minnesota Wild, but we can start thinking a little bit about being a cup contender. It's been a great start to the year, and I know the fans are starting to get the fever, so to speak, and just can't wait to see you throughout the season, every day at the rink, at whether it's practice or games. Always an extra special day when I get to see Easy Mac. Thanks for doing this today.
Same to you. Thanks, Gorgie.
There she goes, Erica McKenzie. I'll be back after a quick break, and we'll put a close on another edition of Wooden Sticks. Yeah, you can feel the energy from that young lady just having that brief conversation today. I love the kid. She's a phenomenal human being. Loved watching her play hockey, and you get a sense for what she brings to the table for the Minnesota Wild every day. She's a beloved employee. It's funny, I was at practice today. I mentioned I did that commercial shoot. It's a Thanksgiving thing we did with Brock Faber and Ryan Hartman, and everybody that works in different tentacles of the Wild, they know Erica McKenzie because she's so involved and she's so good at what she does. And everybody just has nothing but great things to say about Easy Mac. And she goes about her business the right way. And, we've got a lot in common. And, the Swiftie thing is legit. Our passion for the Wild is legit. And now we're besties with a couple of Hall of Famers in Darwitz and Chrissy Wendell, which for all of us here in Minnesota, it just continues to build the great game of hockey. And so for the youngsters that play girls hockey right now in this state, to have the PWHL right there and to have these two remarkable hockey players go into the Hall of Fame and to have that now up in Toronto, it's all boats will rise. And I just think the game continues to get better. And I think for folks that love the game of hockey, like all of us here on this platform, just the future looks so bright. And just a wonderful week on the girls' side for Minnesota hockey. And congratulations to certainly friends of our show here, guests that we've had on with Chrissy and Natalie. Outstanding accomplishment, and something that 30 years ago you wouldn't have dreamed of. It wouldn't even been in the realm of possibility. And to see them on that stage giving those speeches and the tears in their eyes with their connection to their families who helped put them in that position. You could hear it today in Erica's conversation. A lot of emotion involved, and it's a great day and a great week for Minnesota hockey. So thanks for once again being a part of the show, and I look forward to more great contributions from special guests and more great Wild conversation when we get together next week here on Wooden Sticks.